Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Arbo's most tattooed work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
It's me. And we are back to talk about Subordination 6.3, which begins with Blake, his coven, and Nick of the Knights driving them into the city. And Nick and Blake kind of giving Alexis and Ty a bit of a brief on the essentials of being a practitioner.
Yeah, like it's all just these fundamental concepts that Blake has either kind of gotten from Rose or just like figured it out as he's going.
Yep.
I like all this stuff about how Nick views power as a currency, and everything you do is either about spending it or gathering/investing it or exchanging it. And there's a few bits spread throughout this where it kind of feels like Nick almost feels like Nick thinks he's giving Blake this rundown as much as he's giving it to the other two. Like there's a bit where Blake is just sort of like, oh no, you can only have one familiar and it's a life thing, and Nick just sort of interjects and he's like, well, in Asia, and talks about how it's different there, which I think we already knew that a little bit, right? Was it just that Maggie had mentioned that in Asia they were more about like binding and sort of, you know, for lack of a better word, conquering others as opposed to the West?
Yeah. We did get some kind of hints at the different, obviously, cultural relationships to being a practitioner.
Yeah.
You get the impression that Blake is simplifying this for the purpose of explanation, and Nick just kind of jumps in as like, well, actually, where it's not helpful.
Yeah, but I don't know. There are just a few moments, and there's a bit where Nick raises his eyebrows at Blake when Blake says, "Oh no, this is for them." That just makes me think Nick's almost like Blake kind of needs some of this basic coverage as well,
which I think he does.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Nick's entirely wrong. Blake's one of those people, you know, it's like people who teach themselves a skill or something, and you'll have like really advanced knowledge of some bits and absolutely terrible knowledge of others, because as you teach yourself, you'll miss parts.
It's occurring to me, has Nick ever met Rose?
Yes, in the drive back to Blake's place when they were first playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
because he didn't like Rose, because Rose was the one suggesting pulling out demons and stuff. So I think he actually likes Blake more.
I think we're obviously, as the audience, pretty aware of Rose's, you know, job as the library to Blake's improv style. And I guess Nick only obviously knows Blake as being improvisational and doesn't see that he has a library following him around as well.
Or he knows that he does have a library, but it's the library that keeps telling him to summon demons, so he doesn't want Blake to use it.
True. So Nick is kind of going. Nick and Blake are going over all the kind of classic beats. Oh, you can't lie. Oh, here's the familiar, implement, domain, all this stuff.
Which isn't really like. It's not very prominent information right now. Like basically, the summary of this section is: here's the concept of a familiar, an implement, and a domain. You can't get any of that right now, so it seems like a waste of time to bring it up.
It's not really important. I think not lying, important.
Yes.
Here's how to get a familiar, but you can't. Not important. Anyway, Nick obviously, you know, it's obviously mostly the same as what we kind of know them as from the story so much, but Nick describes them differently, a bit of a different spin. You've summed it up here as like a business view of it using a business metaphor, which I think is pretty apt.
Yeah, and I actually really like it. Like this is sort of how I've been thinking about it ever since reading this. Like Blake talks about how Rose wanted to make it all science, which I definitely don't think is the right way to view this world. And Blake thinks of it as art because it's all about like bullshitting and symbolism, which is definitely true. But I mean, there's a lot of that in business as well. Like, you know, just look at the stock market. A lot of the stock market is based on what people think is happening rather than what's actually happening.
It's all perceptions and marketing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I see business and marketing as fairly intertwined, not really being involved in either of them. And so I think the business metaphor works really well because of that.
Yeah, it's good. I think the idea of a domain being a bit of an investment property is a very particularly fun and apt metaphor.
Yeah. I think the last bit from this opening conversation that I thought was really good was Alexis gets a bit upset at Blake because he misled her about how he got the cuts on his arms. And she sort of accepts why he did it, but she's still a little ticked. And Blake gets that because I think it's a fair response. But I love how Evan won't let it go. Like, he keeps really pushing her, and he's like, yeah, but you know why you did it, right? And yeah, it's just a great little Evan moment. Which
Yeah.
there's a few I've spread throughout this chapter, but I'm already getting the impression that Evan ships Belexis quite hard.
I think that ship is called Blalexis, which is a much more disgusting name.
See,
for it.
that's what I had typed originally, and then I thought about how I would say it, and I got rid of the first L because
Half of being into shipping, Elliot, is making the most hard to say ship names that you can. No, but you're right. Evan obviously comes to this with the naivety of kind of, if he doesn't understand, he'll keep pushing at it until he does.
Yeah, and I mean, we see that work out later on.
Yeah, true. That is true, actually. I kind of didn't make that connection. This is seeding Evan's, Evan's unwillingness to let things go, which comes in handy later on.
And is very Blake. Like, I just love how it also backs him as a great pick for Blake.
So they get closer and closer to the tower, and Blake kind of realizes how he gets closer to realizing just how screwed he is. He's kind of putting together like he needed more tools, and so he awakened some pals, but he's kind of only just realizing like, oh shit, this doesn't actually help me in the short term at all.
Yeah, like there's this bit where Tyler asks, what exactly should we try and learn in these 15 minutes since we can't get like familiars or any of that? And Blake basically says, oh, you can't really learn to do anything. You just got to come in with me and like back me up when things go bad. Which, like, what? Like, it's just... he's like, oh, you're not going to be able to do anything, but you just really got to walk into the dragon's den with me and, like, just charge it. Like, it's bizarre. Like, I mean, I suggested originally that he shouldn't even just awaken them, but try and, like, get them all to give him some power. And, like, if I was one of these people, I'd be like, look, take all my power, give me this weird, like, flu like, awful symptoms or whatever, but keep me the fuck away from the rest of it. Like, I'll sit in the corner and recover over a week. But, like, I'd rather just give the power to Blake and stay the fuck away.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been a bit of a hard sell, but he could probably get them to do the old cut your arms and feed the connection with the blood kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like, that seems like the best use of their existing talents so far, which is that they have power. That's their talents right now, as far as I can tell.
They're like batteries. Yeah. So Blake is kind of desperately trying to figure out, are there any monsters that we can, bind for a little bit of a last minute power boost? And Nick just kind of shuts down every idea that he has.
Yeah, it's a bit of a last minute scramble to think of, is there anything we might have missed? And I like this bit. Nick also points out that most practitioners don't really ever get in fights except when picking like familiars and domains. And Blake's just like, really? And like Nick goes on a bit of a tangent about how Blake is actually very experienced, like not knowledgeable. He's sure to clarify that point. But like in terms of combat experience, Blake's actually right up there because he hasn't had a chance to be cautious like it seems most people do.
Yeah, you're right. His life has been one big struggle since he awakened, so it makes sense that he's kind of in that position.
Yeah. And there's of course another bit where Blake sort of, I guess, forgets that everyone sort of sees connections and spirits like a little bit differently. Like it's kind of a unique thing that everyone processes in their own way. And there's this interesting bit where, as Alexis is sort of trying to describe hers, she talks about like some of the connections she's seeing. Like she sees spirits moving around, leaving trails. It almost looks like strings from my hand to your arm and from my head to your mouth. And so like the first one, from her hand to her arm, that's presumably like
to Blake's arm.
Yeah, Alexis's arm to Blake. Sorry, Alexis's hand to Blake's arm. That's clearly like the tattoos, right? Because he's got the bird tattoos on his arms.
Yeah. I think that's indicated there.
The head to the mouth one's interesting because I think, is it because Blake's explaining things to her or...
Yeah, Blake's words are going into her head, maybe. Yeah, I don't know quite what to make of it. I think that's something that we can keep an eye on. So they get closer, and Blake kind of realizes that Conquest's tower is even more lit up with connections than before. All of the major players have turned out to see what's going on. Basically, everybody is there.
Yeah, it's the event of the season. We get this little mention, like, now. Like Tiffany was in her own car, and as she's getting out, she's still getting like her own version of the 15-minute lesson. And I was just wondering like how that compares to what the others got, which was pretty useless, really. Like they've come out of this 15 minutes with "Don't lie." That's really their only effective lesson. Now, I wonder if Tiffany got anything more valuable out of the night that she had.
Yeah. They're clearly still kind of figuring things out on the fly, right?
Yeah.
Blake is still kind of giving them instructions all the way until the end of this chapter where they get into Conquest's the top floor of the tower.
Yeah, which talk about the blind leading the blind, right? Like...
Yeah, totally. So Isadora's there, you know, she's obviously her usual mix of hilarious and terrifying, which is fun. And it's also the first time we see the Sisters of the Torch and the Shepherd, who are, you know, just as a weird and interesting as you kind of hope they will be based on first hearing about them.
Yeah, I love how Tyler and Alexis react to Isadora. Like Tyler's just like completely blown away, and Blake kind of has to remind him that he can't keep like exaggerating and
Blake
using
kind of
euphemisms.
Shushes him a bit, which is fun.
Yeah, what's interesting, like Tyler's had a few moments now where he's sort of not quite slipped, but using things that he like phrases that he should probably stop trying to use. And you can really see why places like Bahamian, Duchamp's families really focus on this from the time you're a young child, because it would be so hard to stop doing that way. That is, you know, in my top 50 reasons I'd be a bad practitioner, is that one.
Too reliant on sarcasm.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course Alexis just gets that smoke she's been jonesing for the whole chapter. It's as if I just get the impression it's sort of like she walks out of the car and sees this giant sphinx and he's just like, "No, that's it. I need this smoke."
I'm out. Yeah. No, I like. Yeah, they're kind of. They still don't realize quite what they're in for, right?
I don't think they really get it until they get into Conquest Tower, for sure.
Even seeing a fucking sphinx is like. They're closer, but they still don't fully get there.
And so going back to what you mentioned before, I liked the Sisters of the Torch. They're actually a lot more legit than I expected. I was thinking just like a group of people.
A sorority.
The more sorority, how they started, and, you know, they dabbled and keep to the fringes and just sort of appease Conquest to stay alive. But they actually seem kind of intimidating. Like they have costumes and everything, which is dedicated. And then the Shepherd's creepy. He's like a dude with a horse that isn't an other or a horse, which, whatever that means. Maybe it's possessed or something even creepier. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely not a ghost horse. It's something else. So Isadora and the Sisters of the Torch are here to kind of oppose Conquest. It seems like the end of Blake's 3 trials has brought all of this stuff to a head. So the opposition to Conquest has turned up to kind of see what happens and maybe make a play, while some people have shown up to support Conquest, including the Shepherd, but for some reason he's just kind of staying outside.
Yeah. I very much get this sense that like Toronto was an intricate chessboard and Blake walking into town has just kind of tipped the whole thing over.
Yeah, he's done the pigeon strategy.
And there's an interesting bit where... So Blake asks for one of the Sisters of the Torch's names, and she says, like, "That's rude." And then Blake says, "Okay, my apologies." And the Sister of the Torch replies, "Apologies taken and accepted." And I immediately thought of, it would have been in like 1.4, 1.5 when
something like that,
when they had the run-in with Padraic, and that was like a whole thing where Rose was like, he can't give you his apologies because then they'd be like gone forever. And I'm wondering if has he just accidentally given away his apologies and like
apologies taken and accepted is ominous wording, isn't it?
Yeah, right. And like Blake doesn't pick up on it at all. I mean, he's got other things on his mind, but I'm cautiously nervous that like in a few chapters he's going to want to apologize to someone and physically be incapable or something. Kind of like how Maggie can't swear. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess we'll see. But stood out to me.
So, the Sisters and Isadora basically have kind of come to the conclusion that maybe the best way to oppose Conquest right now is to kill Blake. Isadora seems very keen. She actually seems to come quite close to just, like, ending Blake right then and there. And he has to kind of think on his feet and offer her some half-hearted assurances that he won't become one of the bad diabolists, really.
Yeah, it's kind of a recap on everything we've been talking about since seeing Black Lamb's Blood. Like she talks a lot about how just being close to these dark forces basically gives you an opportunity. So it gives the dark forces an opportunity to find a way to make you use them. She seems to think that just by being around Blake, his friends are stuffed, and will be drawn into making those amateur Diabolist mistakes we keep hearing about.
Yeah, which honestly, I mean, we've kind of seen that happen, right?
Yeah. And like she's just willing to kill Blake because he's a Diabolist, and that's actually something he basically argues against explicitly calling, like what Black Lamb's Blood was talking about.
Yeah. And yeah, Isadora kind of drops truth bombs on Blake this whole section. Right?
Yes.
There's a fun bit that I want to pull out just because I think it's a very fun line that breaks up quite a daunting set of truth bombs. When Isadora says, "You will exact promises from your other disciple. I smell one on you. She was there when you came to my office. She is warm for you." Warm for me? Alexis coughed just behind me and to my left. Yeah, good times.
Yeah, it's a hilarious little moment mixed in too. Yeah, as you said, like there's a bit where Isadora implies that Blake being able to awaken his friends was actually bad karma, like acting on him.
Yes.
Which is a horrifying proposition that he only has a second to fully comprehend, but oh boy.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It means that these people are not in for a fun time.
It makes you really worried for the new cabal or whatever we're calling them. And I guess the last thing I wanted to mention about the Isadora conversation is she does say that Blake, like, because she's really good at reading karma, which is such a useful skill, but she says that Blake seems to have done 3 right things, that's right with a capital R, to have gained him some positive karma. And I'm curious what those might be. Like, I feel like one would have something to do with Evan, like not just getting him as a familiar, but some of the promises he's maybe made or kept with Evan. But I'm wondering if you or any listeners have more concrete ideas as to what some of these 3 right things might be that he's done in the last 2 and a bit days.
I suspect so. Obviously, an obvious answer could be binding Paus and the hyena, but that doesn't quite feel right. Maybe he obviously I've forgotten the guy's name. The guy who was like bound to Paus, but he saved his life, right? That's gotta be worth something. And maybe like making the oaths to the knights about like, hey, we're gonna go fuck up this erasure demon is, worth good karma. I don't know.
Especially because they've given him the credit for it, really. Like there was the bit, I don't know if we really drew much attention to it back at the time, but when Blake got out and he was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't kill it," and Pris just sort of looks at him. It's like, "Oh, I mean, you tried. Like, we're not going to claim you didn't try. Fucking look at you."
I also wonder. Obviously, during the kind of police story bit, there was parts where Blake kind of half forsworn Duncan. I wonder if there's like you get a bit of a karma boost for calling out another practitioner on a lie.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, yeah, could be.
I'm interested to hear what our listeners think.
Yeah, if anyone has any ideas, I'm definitely keen to hear them.
Yeah. So eventually, Blake kind of gets Alexis and Ty to promise not to be bad Diabolists, and this convinces Isadora enough to get him up to the base of the tower, but the shepherd now opposes him and stands in his way.
Yeah, and the first time I read this, I actually missed that the shepherd was the guy with the horse. I thought it was just the horse. So I was like really intimidated by this like angry horse coming and blocking his way.
A big horse getting in his way. But then everyone being like, "Oh, he never talks." It would have been like, "Yeah, he's the fucking horse."
I mean, well, but Evan talks. Like I just assumed it was a crazy magic horse, but no, yeah. It's a guy, which isn't necessarily less intimidating, but it was just a very different image the second time going, "Oh no, the shepherd's the guy with the horse."
Yeah. So the shepherd is getting in his way because Blake took Evan and made Evan his own when the shepherd claims to have ownership over all ghosts and related things. And Blake kind of knows, hey, this is what the shepherd's getting in my face about. But he kind of puts the shepherd in his place correctly, that the shepherd, took absolutely no action to help Evan pass on or even bind him, because he was obviously didn't want to get mixed up with the hyena. So I think Blake's in the right here.
Oh, absolutely. But it's a marked difference from, like, he just had a fairly civil interaction with Isadora despite their differences.
Yeah.
And he met her halfway and tried to get her to meet him halfway as well. Whereas there's none of that here. He just lays down the law. He's like, nah, fuck you. You didn't try. You don't get a say. It's a very different interaction.
Yeah. He also doesn't necessarily know that the shepherd didn't try to do anything about the hyena, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I assume he's correct in assuming it, but
yeah, no, he definitely
it is an
seems correct, but yeah, who knows? Yeah. So Evan, so people kind of chime into this argument, and it basically turns into Blake arguing that he's trying to do the right thing, and the sister's like, "Ooh, you're a bad diabolist," and Evan kind of comes in and puts them all in his in their place by pointing out that Blake's the only one who's really tried to help him or solve any of these problems, and they're all like, the sister's like, "Oh no, we couldn't do that." But Evan's right that they're all kind of shitting on him when he's the only one who really seems to be, I don't know, taking steps.
Well, it's that classic, like, sort of childhood black and white logic sort of thing where Evan's just attacking them with this sort of simple, flawless, black and white view of the world. It's like, well, Blake's actually trying to help, and all the adults are like, oh, it's more complicated than that. You wouldn't understand. He's like, okay, well, explain it. Why is it bad that Blake is trying to stop things and you're not? And they sort of come up short. And, you see that in real life. It's great.
Yeah, it's good. Evan is of course, Evan is always a bit of an MVP, but you feel it in this chapter too. So the shepherd seems to want to start some beef with Blake, but Fell shows up, and Fell basically says to the shepherd, like, back off, you don't want to mess with Conquest right now. And it works. And so Fell kind of bails him out and starts taking Blake and his coven up to Conquest, giving them a bit more info on what's going on here.
Yeah, and it's great because Fell knows more about, like, who's opposing Conquest and who isn't than Blake does, and just sort of gives him all of it, which, given how the Fell lineage interlude ended, sort of makes sense. But yeah. I wonder how much of this Conquest knows. Like, I feel like Conquest isn't the type to ask until it's absolutely necessary that he know, and I doubt Fell's volunteering it. So Blake may actually have some more knowledge here than Conquest does right now.
Yeah, well, Fell kind of gives a bit of a breakdown. I'll pull it out. Fell says, Isadora and the sisters are opposing Conquest, though Isadora is keeping secrets. The High Drunk and the Shepherd are loosely affiliated with Conquest. The Knights and Astrologer are nebulously affiliated with you and your new circle, Fell said. The Astrologer is in our camp? I like... Blake is such small potatoes, the Astrologer didn't even mention to him that she's on his side.
Yeah, it's great. And yeah, I mean, as I said, I love that this is coming from Fell, who is presumably, subtly trying to prepare Blake with some knowledge. In a way that doesn't explicitly act against Conquest, and also just because from Blake's perspective, he doesn't know that, so he's assuming this is like, he assumes Fell is very much Team Conquest, I imagine. So he must think that this information isn't very useful, but like it would really make him feel like he has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. So Blake and company get to the top of the tower, and Conquest is there in his final boss form, along with the Eye, Duncan, Rose, and surprise return, Laird's back. Woo woo woo.
Yes, I was very excited to read that. I love Laird. So what's interesting here is there were meant to be 6 big players inside, because there were 10 big players around, was a number that was thrown around a lot halfway through the chapter, and 4 of them were outside. So there's meant to be 6, and you just listed off 5 names plus Fell. So does that mean Rose is one of these players? Like, according to my count, it's either Rose or they're assumingly that 10 counts like Pauz or the hyena or something. I don't know. Like, the numbers are interesting here. I wonder exactly. I wonder if we're missing someone. I don't know.
Yeah. What? Maybe the Knights? Did you count the Knights?
I didn't, and I don't think the Knights would.
Well, yeah, big players is probably not accurate there. I don't know. You're right. Who knows who they quite are referring to here? Maybe there's going to be a surprise swoop in. We'll see. Yeah. So Conquest says to Blake, basically deconstructs that he completely knows what the plan is, right? He's
Yeah.
like, oh, so 3 minutes left until midnight and 5 minutes left until Powers is unbound. And Blake's like, mm-hmm. And Conquest says something along the lines of, well, I hope you have a plan. Rose raised her head. I saw her eyes widen in surprise as she saw my friends. Yeah, I said, I do. I just wished it was a better one.
Just like, this is the first we've heard of it.
Yeah, I don't even know if he has a. If he could lie, I would call this a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an interesting chapter, right? It's a weird one. It's a bit slow. It feels like it's kind of like Blake just stepping up some heavy stairs to get to the final boss fight. But I do really love this ending line. You just are set up for this great moment of like, Blake is here. He's managed to get all the tools he can. Let's see shit pop off, right?
Yeah, the shit's about to hit the fan. I agree. This chapter to me feels like the calm before the storm in a way. Like, as you sort of said, it's nothing big happens. It's like in a video game where you walk into that room that's just got a big door and a bunch of health items, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go.
All right, here we go. Yeah,
but it's also like, and I think a big reason it feels like that is because we get like a whole recap of everything in this chapter. Like, first we get the fundamentals with our new people, then we meet all the big players again and have talks about where they all stand, and of course we get led. So it really feels like this chapter is all about getting us, definitely making sure that we know what, like, everything that we need to remember as we head into the shit storm that's going to be the start of the next chapter, presumably.
That's the thing that makes me excited about this chapter too, is it, speaking from a kind of meta-narrative perspective, if it was just Blake and Rose and maybe his coven fighting against Conquest, I don't think we'd take the time to go through everybody, right?
Yeah.
But we are setting up, here are all the players in this. And so it's kind of like, all right, this is actually, shit's going to get real here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which it just is very exciting to me. It definitely amps you up to see fucking Isadora fighting Laird or whatever the fuck. So that's the end of this chapter of 6.3. I'm really excited to do 6.4, but unfortunately that is not a discussion for now. That is a discussion for another time.
Yeah. Sorry, I just last minute. I just had a thought. I'm gonna lock in a prediction. I'm gonna do that. I think it's been a while since I did one.
Yeah, it's been like a whole arc.
Yeah, at least. I feel like, so Fel said that Isadora's keeping secrets, and just because he said that to Blake, I wonder if one of the secrets is that she actually is going to work with him. I don't know. Like, maybe this is Fel trying to subtly imply that she's more team not kill Blake than she's making out. Well,
the thing about Isadora is she's a big fan of Alexis, so that's really what decides her loyalties. No, okay, interesting prediction. Blake will have an unseen ally in Isadora.
Yeah. I'll just lock that in. It's been a while since I did this.
Loaded. Actually, I'm looking at the prediction tracking sheet, and the most recent prediction you made was that Fel was actually working behind the scenes to help keep Conquest in charge of Toronto.
Yeah, which
I'm just going to go ahead and deconfirm that one now.
I think we already officially deconfirmed that one immediately afterwards in the next chapter.
That's true.
But we mustn't have updated the spreadsheet.
Okay. So that's the end of 6.3 though. So we wanted to do a bit of a discussion question here, just to mix it up a bit and give people a chance to engage more with the story in a different way. The discussion question that we ended up setting on was one that's very much determined by the events that are happening right now, which is, if you had to give someone a crash course on practitioning in 15 minutes, what topics would you focus on?
Yeah, and so, I mean, if you're going to talk about stuff that hasn't been talked about in the story, please, spoiler tag it. No spoilers, but I'm interested to see, if you were trying to prepare someone for the world of practitioning in 15 minutes, what do you think are the important beats to hit?
Yeah. We kind of touched on it a bit where we don't think that familiar, implement, and domain is appropriate. But, let's not just be negative Nancy's. Let's make some suggestions, help Blake improve.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we'll go through answers to that in a week's time, which will be 6.6.
Yep. 6.6, yeah, because it's a month full of bonus episodes this month.
There's a bonus chapter every week this month, because Wildbow is insane.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that is a hard schedule to keep on top of, but luckily, if you need a little help keeping on top of your release schedule for episodes, you can head straight to duffmedia.com, where we have a calendar that keeps track of all the episodes that are released for all the Duff Media shows, including Deep Impact, as well as all the other great shows. Vouterview, We've Got Ward, the Duffcast, all the great stuff.
And if worrying about the future is too much for you, you can head into our discussion thread, which will be in the show notes below. And in there, you'll find a link to Kayakan's list of all of our previous discussion threads, and you can just...
you can worry about the past.
Exactly.
Of course, that discussion thread is where you should put your answers to the discussion question we just mentioned.
Yes.
Or, if you want a different way to do it, why not shoot us a tweet with your answer? It has to be shorter, I guess, but maybe that's a good little writing challenge. If you want to do that, our Twitter is @MediaMDPodcast.
That's right. You know, actually, as you've said, shorter. I mean, please don't feel the need to write out a whole 15-minute speech, because we won't have time to read those answers. we need the dot point version.
Yeah, we're trying to keep on top of episode length. Anyway, speaking of episode length, if you want to support the Duff Network, you can head to patreon.com/duffmedia. That was an interesting segue, but I think it's appropriate. Ever since we joined the network a while ago, we have been very supported by all the fans that are of the Duff Media Network that have joined to read along Pact with us. And we can only do that. Duff Media can only support this show and all the other great shows there because of its patrons. So please head to patreon.com/duffmedia and support the shows.
And as well as the Duff Media community, there's also just the great broader Wildbow community. And that, of course, is also dependent on Wildbow getting donations at patreon.com/Wildbow, so he can keep writing the stories that bring us all together. Yeah,
man, there's been so much great fan art in the subreddit, the Parahuman subreddit at the moment.
Yeah, it's really exploded.
I'm really eager to see the Wildbow fandom keeping on growing. But of course, as it grows, hopefully his Patreon will also grow so that he can keep doing cool stuff that we all like, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And so apart from that, we'll see each other on Monday the 6th of May for Chapter 6.4.
We'll see you all then.